welcome to another episode of Mormon Traditionalist Podcast. My name is Jaron O'Driscoll. I'm your host. Glad to have you guys back for round two. Those of you that I didn't scare off in the intro episode. And honestly, some of you might scare off at this episode too. But let's talk about something before I drop that bomb on you. I don't think anyone would deny that Satan is at work in the world today. No need to list off all the evil around the world. I think it's pretty bipartisan. But there's one particular way that he's working particularly hard to drag church members away from the gospel, and that's by distorting evidence. Let's talk about that for just a second. Evidence. Question. Think about this. Is it wrong to look for physical evidence to strengthen your testimony? Is physical evidence something that you should or shouldn't be looking at? I think that there's this kind of misnomer out there that, we need to focus solely on faith, and that trying to pursue the avenue of looking for actual physical empirical evidence is somehow not in tune or contradicts the idea of faith. But the answer to that question is no, absolutely not. It's not wrong to look for physical evidence. It's only wrong when you value and seek the physical evidence without first having faith to one degree or another. Faith has to come first. It's paramount. It's got to come first. You need the Spirit to confirm the authenticity of the evidence that you find as well, because there's plenty of manipulation of facts and data out there, especially today. Many members have lost their faith because they're looking for evidence of the Book of Mormon in Central and South America. Newsflash, guys, we'll talk about this more in depth in another episode, but Joseph Smith said it was here in North America, United States, the heartland. And guess what? The people looking for that evidence, Central South America, they completely ignore that fact. It's all about, this is something really important I learned from Rod Meldrum watching one of his presentations. There are in the Book of Mormon geographical passages in the scripture that point to the location of where the Book of Mormon happened, and then there's also the spiritual passages, and those spiritual passages are paramount and the key, and those should be looked at first and taken the most seriously. The people looking at the Mesoamerican model for the Book of Mormon are looking solely at the geographical verses in the Book of Mormon, and that's contrary to how it should be done. They completely ignore the fact that Joseph Smith said it was here. Philosophies of men are more important than the words of the prophets to these guys. That's what happens when you rely solely on evidence. Empirical evidence is a faith-building tool, but only when used to back up your faith. All right, now let's back up again. Satan not only encourages us to hold physical evidence above our faith, or just above the idea of faith in general, but he's been manipulating and conjuring false evidence for a long time in an attempt to drag anyone he can from the truth. Joseph Smith said that the devil always sets up his kingdom in tandem with God. He did this during the time of the Restoration and selected his targets very carefully. First, obviously, he targeted the Restoration itself by setting up propaganda to defame Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon. Second, he did the same with the founding of the United States, the forefathers, and specifically the Constitution, all of which God took credit for as his own sponsored, established government. You can read that in Doctrine and Covenants. I don't know it off the top of my head. I'll find the passage, though, and I'll put it in the show notes for you. And last, he weaseled his way into the scientific community. Not many people know this, but the fathers of modern science were all atheists, and that in itself isn't necessarily the horrible part. You can have a bias. I don't really care about people's bias. I just care that they tell the truth. That's what matters. But these guys, these atheists, they all got together, and this is the action that they took that makes this damning. They all got together to specifically design a scientific model that would disprove the existence of God. We have it. We have their own written words to prove it. They weren't secretive about it. They weren't trying to hide it. They were actively trying to do this, and they weren't even trying to do it in the shadows. Most of science today, thanks to that, is pseudoscience. Okay, bold claim. Yeah, I know. We'll go into that in future episodes. But here's the real bomb I'm about to drop on you, okay? The tool that the adversary is using to drive all of this is progressivism. Yes, you heard me right. Progressivism is the devil's spear. Progressivism is the greatest evil that is driving members from the gospel right now. The one-footers, progressives. Promoters of the Mesoamerica Book of Mormon theory, progressives. New Mormon history advocates, progressives. Mainstream scientific community, progressives. Progressivism is evil. Period. You want more evidence about this? How about this? President Ezra Taft Benson named 5 specific men as antichrists of the latter days. John Keynes, the father of socialism. John Dewey, the father of modern education. Charles Darwin, we all know what he's famous for. Sigmund Freud, the father of free love and promiscuity. And Karl Marx, founder of Marxism. And guess who champions all of these antichrists? That's right, progressives. Go take a look at all the good things that the father of New Mormon history, Leonard Arrington, had to say about all these guys. Progressivism is the culmination of all of the philosophies that these 5 men stood for. These men were evil, you guys. Evil with a capital E. We'll take a deep dive into each of these men in future episodes. But for now, you just need to know which side backs these dirtbags and which side condemns them. Okay, progressivism is the tool Satan's using to build his kingdom. All right, I'm convinced of it. The world's on his side, and his power is growing. Good news is, he's doomed to fail. God said it. He's also said that those on the side of the righteous will be preserved in the last days. You can check out Moses 7:61. I'll put that in the show notes too for you. But you got to figure it out for yourself where you stand. Think about it. Now, one more thing here before we wrap this up, guys. I know this is kind of a shorter episode, but here's the thing. I want you to think back on the war in heaven. A little bit of a refresher for you guys. The war in heaven, we were all there, and there were 2 plans espoused, right? We had all gained all the knowledge and experience we could while living in our Father's presence, and we had to be taken away from His presence and be able to learn and grow in His absence and be able to prove ourselves, because the ultimate goal is to be like Him, literally to be like Him, to have our own spirit children and create our own worlds and have that kind of benevolent power over other lives, other individuals. And there were 2 plans put out to do that. Number 1, God's plan was everybody would have agency, right? We would all have the freedom to choose for ourselves what we were going to do and who we were going to serve. The caveat being that the Lord knew that not everyone would make it back. He knew that there was a segment of His children that He would be saying goodbye to for the last time that would never be able to return to His presence. And that thought, maybe just as a side note, might bother some people. But you got to think about it, just like with one of your kids. If they do something wrong and you tell them, if you do this, you are going to have this punishment, and then they do that thing and you don't punish them, that they have no incentive to be better and to actually show their true colors and what they can do. So that's a necessary part that some will not be able to return to His presence again. That's got to be there. It's important. That's just as a side note. But there was another plan raised by Lucifer, where he said, everyone will be forced to do what is right. I'm going to compel everyone to do what is right. There will be no choice. There will be no freedom. I will make it easy by forcing you to do it. and the result will be not one life will be lost. The difference between the two plans is God favored agency, liberty, freedom over security. The antithesis to that was Satan's plan, which espoused force and coercion so that not one single soul would be lost, for the protection and the safety of everyone, for the collective good. You take a look at that and think about that, and you decide which side of the aisle is favoring whose plan. And that's all there is for this episode. Guys, if you want to get a hold of me, you can email mormontraditionalist@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you guys, get your feedback, any questions you might have. Also, make sure to subscribe to the show wherever you're listening. And if you like the show, then please leave me a 5-star review. It goes a long ways to making sure this message gets out to more people that need to hear it. I'd really appreciate it. You can also follow me on Instagram at Mormon Traditionalist. I post a lot of my content there too. And until next time, guys, remember, never back down from the truth.